Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
We got to talk some Milwaukee Brewers as the Brewers taking 3 out of 4 against the Cardinals this past weekend. Picking up the win yesterday on Sunday to secure that series win for the Brewers. A 3-2 victory, even though it was getting sketchy there in the top of the ninth. But Trevor McGill with 2 on and 2 outs, able to strike out the final batter to secure the win and pick up his 15th save on the season. Quinn Priester, dude was pretty darn solid. We're going to get to Quinn Priester here in a second. 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 3 strikeouts to improve to 5-2 on the season. Christian Yelich picking up another home run. He collected 3 total hits yesterday, but picking up his 14th home run on the season. Caleb Durbin also collecting a couple of hits. Between Yelich and Durbin, they had 5 of the 9 hits for the Brewers yesterday. Going to Quinn Priester, you just look at this, what this guy has done as of late, and you just got to tip your cap to him. In his last 4 starts, all wins. Or his last 4 games, because there was one that technically wasn't a starter. But in his last 4 games, all wins for Quinn Priester. Going back to the 30th against Philadelphia, that was the game that DL Hall started, and pitched 3 innings, and Quinn Priester comes in and finishes it off with 6. Picked up the win there, but in his last 3 games here in the month of June, picked up a win against Cincinnati, picked up a win against Atlanta, and then picking up this win yesterday against the Cardinals. And you look at his 3 games in the month of June, all he's done is gone 3-0, but also a 1.59 ERA. Just 1 earned run he has given up in each game that he has played so far in the month of June. And in his last 2 outings, he hasn't issued a single walk. Gave up 3 walks in his game against Cincinnati back on June 4th, but the last 2, no walks. No free base runners, nada. And you look at, just kind of since he was first acquired back in early April, because let's face it, the Brewers needed some pitching help because of all the injuries. And at that point, there were some people like, did they give up too much for Quinn Priester? That was kind of the thought process. Did they give up a little bit, or a little bit too much? But I think now you look at Quinn Priester and you're like, that might be a trade that worked out for the Brewers, because he has absolutely helped them out a lot this year, has pitched his way to being a consistent starting pitcher on this roster. And you look at the control that the Brewers are going to be able to control him for the next few years in terms of a contract. I mean, he's pre-arbitration for 2026 and 2027. And when we talk about some of those young arms, those young starting arms that the Brewers have maybe an overload or a luxury of, he's a part of that. He's a part of that, and he's pitching his way to being, a part of that future for the next few years here for the Brewers. And it's a really good piece on Brewers.com if you want to learn a little bit more about Quinn Priester and just the latest trend he's had. It's by Ryan Herrera. And a big theme that you hear from whether it's Pat Murphy or Quinn Priester himself, it's just that confidence level. It's the confidence level that has come from him, and has been a big reason why he's been having some success, but also some of the mechanical work. Because remember, when he was first acquired by the Brewers, there was this okay, let's get him into our pitching lab, into our system. Might need some fine-tuning, maybe some adjustments. Like you take your vehicle over to AGM Automotive, or our good friends over there, and you need a little tune-up, and you need a little bit of an adjustment to get it working really well. That was kind of the thought of Priester when the Brewers first acquired him. It's like, let's get him in to our shop here, fine-tune it a little bit, adjust this thing here and there, and feel like he's going to be a really good pitcher. And I think we're seeing the benefits of that, or the results of some of that. And right now he has developed into a pretty darn good pitcher so far here for the Brewers. And you just hope that continues, that upward trend. Because he's going to continue to get some more starts. Probably going to be part of that regular rotation, I would imagine, throughout this regular season. I know that question is going to come up again here whenever Brandon Woodruff does make his return to the starting lineup for the Brewers. Whenever that's going to be, it's going to be a little bit yet here. We'll get to Brandon Woodruff in a second because we do have an update on his status. But nonetheless, I think kind of have to tip your cap to Matt Arnold, to the front office, for making this move to bring him in. But also, again, another feather in the cap and another tip of the cap to Chris Hook, to Jim Henderson, and the pitching coach, or the pitching staff, the pitching coaches, for the work that they have done with Quinn Priester. It just feels like, we talk about it a lot in different sports or different teams, specifically maybe for the Packers. It's like, oh, yeah, they can always find offensive linemen, or they can always develop these offensive linemen. And I think when you look at it from a Brewer standpoint, more times than not, they have done a pretty darn good job when it comes to developing pitchers. You look at a lot of youngsters that they have a part of this plan here, and you look back on their history. I mean, whether it was Brandon Woodruff or Corbin Burns at that time, and Freddy Peralta and such. Over the years, these last few years especially, they've done a pretty solid job of developing these younger pitchers and getting the most out of them. And that's kind of the plan. I think that's what the Brewers have to do going forward with their pitchers, is hopefully getting some good development and getting the most that they can out of some of their younger pitchers, because I think it's pretty evident that they're not going to be big spenders when it comes to locking up pitchers for the long haul. Yeah, they'll sign a guy like a Jose Quintana for a 1-year deal, try to extend his career, try to get something out of him for a few $1 million. But are they going to go out there and spend $300 million, $200 million on a pitcher? No, I don't think so, because I think this is how they envision it, how they're going to go about things when it comes to their pitching staff. And that decision, another decision that they're going to have to make with that, is probably going to involve Freddy Peralta. I'll get to that here in a second. But a quick update to Brandon Woodruff. So Brandon Woodruff, through his first bullpen session since he was struck on the right elbow, back on June 3rd. And kind of an I appreciate the positivity coming from Brandon Woodruff, but he also kind of said maybe it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because during his bullpen session he threw 25 pitches, said he felt good, but his mechanics or his metrics and such was right where I want it to be. He said that his elbow was a non-issue. His shoulder definitely feels better after a little extra time off, and said it's been a while since I've been able to feel like this, talking about his whole body right now. So he feels good. He says that, quote, I think a lot of stuff happens for a reason. Not that I want to get hit, but you can look at things and you can let it beat you down. But for me, I've taken this, I've used it to my advantage, and I've gotten the body to feel better, fresher, cleaned up a lot of stuff mechanically. So I used it for good. And if you look at it any other way, then you're just kind of digging yourself in a hole as far as mentally. I've been doing this rehab for so long that that's not going to do me any good. So what's next now for Brandon Woodruff? Well, it sounds like the plan's going to be he's going to stay in Milwaukee while the Brewers go to Chicago. He'll throw an up-and-down bullpen session of about 40 pitches, simulating 2 innings, either Wednesday or Thursday. Then the next step, according to Woodruff, quote, I'll do the up-down here, talking about staying in Milwaukee and such, and then I'm not sure on the schedule, but I believe it's whenever they come back, we'll possibly do an outing here, kind of like a live and then simulate a game, and then I'll go out and pitch again. Tentatively, I think that's what it's looking like. So, when he does go back out on a rehab assignment, Woodruff says he hopes to throw around 60 pitches in his first outing and then 75 to 80 in his second outing. And if that goes well, that might be enough for him to be ready for a return to Major League action. So you're still probably talking about a couple weeks, a few weeks here. I mean, it's not going to be till July when we see, knock on wood again, won't be until July when we see Brandon Woodruff return to the starting rotation here for the Brewers. But as of right now, when you look at the starting staff for the Brewers, I mean, they're in a pretty good spot. They're in a pretty good spot. You got to give a lot of those guys credit for holding down the fort. I think it's fair to say, even with a lot of the injuries and such, starting pitching has not been the biggest weakness for this Brewers team. But going to Freddy Peralta, I want to talk a little bit about this because John Heyman from the New York Post had a piece up on Friday, I believe it was, a couple days ago. And it was a little bit of a nugget that said Freddy Peralta has been wanting to work with the Brewers, wanting to get an extension done with the Brewers, but so far, no luck. And it kind of sounds like, again, maybe I'm a little bit off, but reading in between the lines and such, it kind of sounds like maybe the Brewers aren't, that anxious to get an extension done with Peralta. And when you look at it, Peralta has a club option for next year, and it's only about $8 million. It's very, very, very well within the Brewers' price range for next year. But then 2027, he's an unrestricted free agent. And I think at this point, when you look at the work that Freddy Peralta has put in over the years, he's definitely due for a raise. And he's definitely due for a bigger contract than the one that he signed a few years ago. Now, again, at that time, Freddy Peralta was still an unproven pitcher, showed some really good glimpses, but at that time, it was like, okay, is he bullpen? Is he starter? It was a little bit unknown. And it was like, okay, maybe a little bit of a risk for the Brewers because still kind of an unknown. Freddie, kind of a risk for him too because if he went out there and balled out, he could be leaving some money on the table. But in the same hand, he was getting some guaranteed money. Well, I think in this case, it's worked out for the Brewers that for this Freddy Peralta contract that he signed a few years ago, is a 5-year, $15.5 million extension. It's worked out for the Brewers. And in Freddie's case, did he leave some money on the table? Yes. But right now, if he continues to stay healthy, continues to pitch at a high level, he has put himself in a position to earn a nice payday on his next contract. I don't think that's going to be with the Brewers. I don't think that's going to be with the Brewers, and I don't think that's a hot take or a bold take. I honestly feel like this might be the last year we see Peralta pitch for the Brewers. Now, I know there's also some talk, whether you want to, look on social media or such, is he a guy that could potentially be dealt at the deadline? There's some of that talk out there. I don't know if I'm there yet. I feel like the Brewers would have to. Just absolutely plummet in the standings and go on this just absolute awful tear where they're just like, okay, it's obvious they're not going to be in a playoff position, and then maybe. But I feel like this is something that's going to potentially happen in the offseason. Very similar to, a Corbin Burns or even a Devin Williams that, they're not going to give him a big contract to stick around. One, because that's just not the MO of the Brewers, but also what we were just talking about, their plethora of starting pitchers that they're going to have available and for cheap. Guys that they're going to have available for cheap. That's Quinn Priester. You throw Chad Patrick, I think, into that equation. Jacob Mizorowski, no question about it. We'll see Robert Gasser potentially coming back after his Tommy John surgery, probably more so next year. Logan Henderson. I mean, those are just 5 guys right there. 5 guys, 5 younger starting pitchers that they could potentially be involved in that. Didn't mention Tobias Myers. Hopefully, things start to work out a little bit better in AAA, and maybe he could find that magic that he had last year for the Brewers. So I don't think it'll be this year, but I think it's something now, and it hasn't really been talked about a lot. And I know we're focusing on the present and such, but for the Brewers, I think that clock's probably ticking on Freddy Peralta's tenure with the Crew. I don't know what type of package they could get in return for him. If Peralta makes the All-Star team again this year, he'll be a 2-time All-Star. Now, he won't have the Cy Young Award like Corbin Burns had when the Brewers traded him to Baltimore and such. But he'll only be 31 when he's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. And you look at Freddy Peralta, the guy has been pretty dang healthy. Again, knock on wood that he stays that way. But he's been pretty dang healthy. Pretty reliable. Every 5 days or so, you could count on Freddy Peralta to make that start. He hasn't had a ton of long-term IL stints. So, I mean, if there's a team willing to give him a contract extension, or maybe a team like Baltimore was in position when they acquired Corbin Burns to try to go for it for 1 year, I think that's something Matt Arnold and the Brewers are going to really take a look at next offseason. Is the time right to trade Freddy Peralta and hand the ball over to our younger starting pitchers? And I think, in first blush, when you ask Brewers fans for this trade, you're probably like, get a bat then. Get an impact bat right away. Somebody that can play at the major league level right away. An offensive guy that could get you some production. I think we would all agree with that. A lot of us would agree with that. It's like, yes, get us a bat. Whether like a left side of the field, third baseman, shortstop, whatever. Get us that bat. Because I'm of, as much it would as it would stink to or suck to move on from Peralta, I think given that we've seen glimpses of this younger pitching staff moving forward, and I think you have to have the confidence in Chris Hook and Jim Henderson and such that, you know what, they're going to put these younger guys in a position to succeed, and that they're going to be pretty good. The only question I would have is like, okay, what type of return would you get for Peralta? Or, my confidence level might be a little bit, are they actually going to get an impact bat? Are they actually going to get a guy that in return you're going to be able to like, okay, yep, that's a starter at third, short, wherever, and he's going to be a power bat? Because let's face it, you look at the last 2 trades that the Brewers have done when it's come to their pitchers on expiring deals, and you look at some of the return that they've got. Joey Ortiz, a part of that package with D.L. Hall, but Joey Ortiz with Corbin. Offensively, hasn't been great. And then Devin Williams, part of the Nestor Cortez deal. You got Caleb Durbin. While he's still young and such, and he's, I think, gotten better, he's not a power guy. So I think that's probably one of the question marks that Brewers fans would have in a potential deal involving Freddy Peralta. If you were to get a bat in return, is it going to be a better bat than what they got for Burns and Devin Williams at this point? That's an unknown. We don't know right now. But I think, all things considered, I feel more confident in the Brewers replacing Freddy Peralta if they make this deal in the offseason. Again, I don't want to say it's coming this year, but if they were to make this deal next offseason, I feel better about the Brewers chances of replacing him in the rotation with one of their younger guys than maybe I do at this point, and them in their return maybe finding that impact bat. Does that make sense? Just given recent history. So, but since we're speaking about trades and such, a big one yesterday in Major League Baseball with the Red Sox sending Devers over to the Giants. And a trade like that, I in my opinion, I think puts a little bit more pressure on a team like the Brewers because, the Giants gave up some pitching, but they bring in a talented hitter, one of the better hitters in all of Major League Baseball, to put into that lineup with the Giants, a Giants team that is competing with the Padres and the Dodgers in that NL West. You got the Diamondbacks you throw in there too. And right now, the Giants are one of the 3 wild card teams as we approach the halfway mark of the season. The Brewers are the first team out of the wild card chase. They're a game and a half back. But you got another team in the National League that added a bats to that lineup. And I think puts a little bit more pressure on a team like the Brewers when we know what's their biggest weakness. Probably their offense. Probably a power bats. And you got a team that the Brewers are going to be competing against to try to get in the postseason, and they got one of those power bats. So now it's like, all right, do you counter it? How do you, I feel like it made things a little bit more difficult for the Brewers in this playoff chase. Again, I know we're not quite halfway through the season, but all things considered, when you look at it, it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a tougher road to climb here. Now, the Brewers, if you're just kind of wondering, looks like they don't play the Giants up until August. So the Willie Adames return to Milwaukee. They already played the Giants for 4 games back in April, so they will be going up against the Giants coming up in at the end of August there. But just from a National League standpoint and from a playoff standpoint, that's a big trade. It's a big trade. And I know the Red Sox obviously were probably getting frustrated with Devers. Devers was a guy, like, I ain't playing first. I ain't changing positions. I ain't doing that. But he's still a fantastic hitter, an incredible hitter. And the Giants' offense just got better. So I think, again, we'll see if the Brewers do anything when we get a little bit closer to that trade deadline and such. I still think that let's see how they finish off this month of June. I think right now during this schedule that we've talked about, they're doing a pretty darn good job. I mean, I think they're doing a really good job. You sweep the Phillies, you take 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati. You do lose a series against the Padres in Atlanta, but you bounce back nicely against a division opponent that you were doing battle with in terms of standings. You take 3 out of 4 against the Cardinals. So a nice bounce back after I thought winnable series against the Padres and the Braves. You bounce back. You take that 3 out of 4 against the Cardinals. Now let's see you go on the road and go up against the Chicago Cubs, first place in your division. If you take 2 out of 3 against the Cubbies coming up here, now we're cooking with peanut oil. Shout out a Duck Dynasty reference there. And then going on the road against the Twinnies. I know the Twinnies are struggling here a little bit. They just got swept. But from a Brewer standpoint, take advantage of that. If the Twinnies are struggling here a little bit, go in there, go into Target Field and take that series. And then they're not good teams, but that's why it makes it, in my opinion, the series against Pittsburgh and the series against Colorado to finish up the month of June, all that more important. Because you flipping better win that series. Win both of those series. So I think we're going to have a really good idea at the conclusion of this month, at the end of June, when we open up July, where the Brewers are going to be opening up on the road against the Mets. That's going to be a tough test. And they got Miami, and they got the Dodgers in there. But I think by the time we get to July 1st, we should have a good sense of, all right, is this a playoff caliber team or not? And then maybe Matt Arnold and his staff and the front office will be like, okay, we're into July now. Trade deadline's coming up towards the end of the month here. Are we going to do this thing? Are we going to look to make this team better? And I think we would all agree that, well, the way to make this Brewers team better and to maybe push for a playoff spot, and not only to get to the playoffs, but maybe win a series or two and make a run in the postseason, is probably finding some more bats. Probably finding a power bat. But they're going to have competition for that too. And they may have to pay a little bit of a hefty price. But maybe they can trade from a position of great strength that they already have on this roster.